50 enticing geography facts about New York. Did you know New York has lakes that plunge deeper than the ocean floor, mountains older than dinosaurs, and an entire city built on a pile of Ice Age rubble? How about underground rivers flowing beneath Manhattan, glaciers that carved finger-shaped lakes into solid rock, and a waterfall taller than Niagara that most people have never heard of? New York isn't just the Big Apple and the Statue of Liberty. It's a geological marvel hiding in plain sight. Most people think of New York and picture only skyscrapers, yellow cabs, and crowded sidewalks. They imagine Times Square, Central Park, maybe the Empire State Building. What they don't realize is that this state holds some of the most dramatic geography in America. Ancient mountains that predate the Appalachians, lakes carved by glaciers moving at walking speed for thousands of years, and waterways that changed the course of the entire nation. New York's landscape has been underwater, crushed by mile-thick ice, thrust skyward by tectonic forces, and carved into shapes so perfect they look designed by artists. This is a state where you can stand on billion-year-old bedrock in Central Park, swim in lakes that drop below sea level, and hike mountains that once towered higher than the Rockies. So here are 50 enticing geography facts about the Empire State that'll make you see New York as more than just a dot on the northeastern corner of the map. Because once you learn what's hiding beneath those forests, lakes, and city streets, you'll never look at New York the same way again. Fact 50. The only state touching both the Atlantic and the Great Lakes. New York is the only U.S. state that borders both the Atlantic Ocean and the Great Lakes. That's 130 miles of Atlantic coastline along Long Island and New York City, plus another 370 miles of Great Lakes shoreline on Erie and Ontario, plus the western edge of Lake Champlain stretching to Canada. This unique position made New York the natural gateway between the Atlantic world and the continental interior, and it's why the Erie Canal changed everything. Fact 49. A park bigger than Yellowstone, right in the east. The Adirondack Park sprawls across 6 million acres of northeastern New York, larger than Yellowstone, Glacier, Grand Canyon, and Great Smoky Mountains National Parks combined. It's bigger than the entire state of Vermont. And here's the wild part. It's not technically a national park. It's a patchwork of public and private land where towns, homes, and businesses exist inside forever wild protected areas. You can drive through a village, grab lunch, and 5 minutes later be deep in constitutionally protected wilderness that's been untouched since the 1890s. Fact 48. Mountains older than bones. The Adirondack Mountains contain some of the oldest exposed rock on Earth, over 1 billion years old, formed when the supercontinent Rodinia was still assembling. These aren't part of the Appalachians. They're geologically Canadian shield rock, the ancient foundation of North America, thrust upward by forces geologists still don't fully understand. While the Appalachians formed from continental collisions and erosion, the Adirondacks are a circular dome of billion-year-old basement rock that simply rose. Even today, they're still rising about 2 millimeters per year. Fact 47. 11 lakes shaped like fingers for a reason. The Finger Lakes aren't random. They're parallel north-south trenches gouged by glaciers that advanced and retreated over thousands of years. Seneca Lake plunges 618 feet deep, making it deeper than the distance from sea level down 174 feet. Cayuga Lake drops 435 feet, putting its bottom 53 feet below sea level. These aren't just lakes. They're flooded glacial valleys where ice sheets over a mile thick scraped bedrock into perfect U-shaped troughs, then melted and filled the canyons with crystal clear water. Fact 46. The Hudson River that flows two ways. The Hudson River is technically a tidal estuary for much of its length, meaning the Atlantic Ocean's tides push saltwater upstream as far as Troy, 150 miles from the ocean. Twice a day, the river reverses direction as tides rise and fall. During high tide, it flows north toward Albany. During low tide, it flows south toward the sea. It's a river that can't make up its mind, constantly switching directions like a natural conveyor belt that carried commerce, armies, and ideas both directions for centuries. Fact 45. A waterfall taller than Niagara that nobody talks about. Tectonic Falls plunges 215 feet straight down into a gorge near Ithaca, 33 feet taller than Niagara Falls. It's the tallest single-drop waterfall in the northeastern United States. The falls pour over a cap of hard sandstone into a gorge carved through layers of soft shale, exposing 400 million years of sedimentary history in the canyon walls. Yet somehow, Niagara gets all the glory while Tectonic sits quietly in the Finger Lakes, dropping into one of the most dramatic gorges on the East Coast. Fact 44. New York City built on glacial trash. Long Island is literally a pile of rock and dirt, a massive terminal moraine left behind when the Laurentide ice sheet stopped advancing around 20,000 years ago. The glacier pushed millions of tons of sediment south, piled it up, and when the ice melted, it left behind the ridge that is now Long Island. Manhattan sits on hard bedrock, but Brooklyn and Queens rest on glacial till. The entire foundation of one of the world's greatest cities is Ice Age debris dumped by a retreating glacier. Fact 43. The bedrock that built the skyline. Manhattan's skyscrapers cluster in Midtown and Lower Manhattan because bedrock, Manhattan schist, billion-year-old metamorphic rock, rises close to the surface there. Between 29th Street and Canal Street, the bedrock dips down, which historically meant fewer tall buildings, though modern engineering has changed that. You can see this ancient rock exposed in Central Park, where glacially polished outcrops of schist glitter with mica and garnet, the same stone that holds up some of the tallest buildings ever constructed. Fact 42. A river named for a man looking for China. The Hudson River is named for Henry Hudson, an English navigator working for the Dutch East India Company, who sailed upriver in 1609 searching for a passage to Asia. He made it as far as present-day Albany before realizing this wasn't the route to the Pacific. His failure opened New York to Dutch colonization and turned the Hudson into one of America's most important waterways. Imagine sailing 150 miles up a strange river, convinced you're about to discover the Northwest Passage, only to hit Albany. Fact 41. The Thousand Islands that aren't an exaggeration. The St. Lawrence River between New York and Canada contains an actual archipelago of 1,864 islands, officially the Thousand Islands region. Some islands hold castles and mansions. Some are smaller than a tennis court with a single tree. The rule is simple. To be an island, it must stay above water year-round and support at least 2 living trees. These islands are glacial drumlins, hills of sediment deposited by moving ice, that became islands when post-glacial flooding filled the St. Lawrence Valley. Fact 40. Waterfalls carved after the ice left. The dramatic gorges around Ithaca, Cascadia, Buttermilk Falls, Enfield Glen were carved in the last 10,000 years after glaciers retreated. Streams tumbling from the uplands into the Finger Lakes carved through soft shale layers, cutting deep canyons at a geological blink-of-an-eye pace. These aren't ancient gorges worn down over millions of years. They're post-glacial features, still eroding, still changing. Ithaca earned its nickname, Ithaca is Gorges, honestly. The entire city sits among some of the youngest, most actively forming waterfalls in the eastern United States. Fact 39. The canal that changed a continent. The Erie Canal, completed in 1825, connected the Hudson River to Lake Erie, creating a continuous water route from New York City to the Great Lakes and the continental interior. Before the canal, shipping goods west meant weeks of wagon travel over the Appalachian Mountains. After the canal, freight costs dropped by 95%, travel time collapsed, and New York City became America's commercial capital overnight. The canal was dug through soft glacial sediment deposited by retreating ice sheets. Geology made the Erie Canal possible. Fact 38. Lake George, the lake that doesn't drain to the ocean. Lake George, a pristine 32-mile-long lake in the Adirondacks, drains north into Lake Champlain, which flows into the Richelieu River, which empties into the St. Lawrence, which finally reaches the Atlantic via Canada. It's one of the few waterways in the northeastern U.S. that doesn't drain directly to the Atlantic or the Great Lakes system. Its water takes a long, winding journey through international borders before ever reaching the sea. Fact 37. The Niagara Gorge that's still growing. Niagara Falls has been cutting its gorge southward for about 12,000 years. Ever since glaciers retreated and water from Lake Erie began spilling over the Niagara escarpment into Lake Ontario, the falls have eroded 7 miles upstream from their original position, carving a dramatic gorge through layered sedimentary rock. Geologically, Niagara Falls is temporary. In another 20,000 to 50,000 years, it will erode all the way back to Lake Erie and cease to exist. Fact 36. The Catskill Mountains that aren't technically mountains. The Catskills are actually a dissected plateau, a high, flat region carved into peaks and valleys by rivers. They were never pushed up by mountain-building forces like the Rockies or even the Appalachians. Instead, they're the eroded remnants of a thick stack of sedimentary rock deposited 350 to 400 million years ago when the region was a delta at the edge of an ancient sea. The mountains are what's left after rivers carved away the soft rock for millions of years. Fact 35. Central Park's ancient bedrock playground. Central Park features exposed bedrock outcrops of Manhattan schist, metamorphic rock over 1 billion years old. These glacially polished rock faces show striations, scratch marks, left by ice sheets dragging boulders across them during the last ice age. Visitors sit on picnic blankets atop some of the oldest exposed rock in North America, often without realizing they're lounging on the deformed remnants of an ancient seabed, compressed and heated into stone before complex life even existed. Fact 34. The secret that Long Island is a double moraine. Long Island actually consists of 2 moraines, ridges of glacial debris. The northern ridge formed during an earlier glacial advance, the southern ridge during the most recent one. Between them lies a relatively flat outwash plain. The island's north-south cross-section reveals its Ice Age origins, ridges of till marking where glaciers paused, with sand and gravel washed out from the melting ice filling the spaces between. Fact 33. The Helderberg Escarpment's fossil paradise. West of Albany, the Helderberg Escarpment exposes 400-million-year-old limestone packed with fossils of ancient sea creatures, trilobites, brachiopods, corals, crinoids. These cliffs reveal a time when New York was a warm, tropical sea near the equator. Fossil collectors find complete specimens weathering out of the rock. The escarpment forms a dramatic east-facing cliff visible for miles, a geological layer cake of deep time and vanished oceans. Fact 32. Tug Hill Plateau, the snow machine. The Tug Hill Plateau northeast of Lake Ontario is one of the snowiest places east of the Rockies, regularly receiving 200 to 300 inches of lake-effect snow annually. Cold Arctic air masses crossing the relatively warm waters of Lake Ontario pick up moisture, then dump it as snow when they hit the rising terrain of Tug Hill. Some winters bury towns in 20-plus feet of total snowfall. It's a geological snow machine, a plateau in exactly the wrong, or right, place to catch every lake-effect storm. Fact 31. The Palisades, ancient lava frozen in place. The Palisades cliffs along the Hudson River in New Jersey, visible from New York, are a massive sill of diabase rock, molten magma that intruded between layers of sedimentary rock about 200 million years ago and cooled slowly underground. Erosion later stripped away the overlying rock, exposing vertical columns of dark igneous rock rising 300 to 500 feet above the Hudson. These cliffs mark the moment when the supercontinent Pangaea began breaking apart, opening the Atlantic Ocean. Fact 30. Lake Tier of the Clouds, source of the Hudson. The Hudson River begins at Lake Tier of the Clouds, a tiny pond at 4,292 feet elevation on the slopes of Mount Marcy in the Adirondacks, the highest lake in New York State. From this remote alpine tarn, water trickles down through 315 miles of valleys, gorges, and tidal estuary to reach New York Harbor and the Atlantic. The river that defines New York starts as a puddle on a mountaintop. The lake is only about a quarter acre in size, often still holding ice in June and freezing again by October. Reaching it requires a strenuous hike through High Peaks Wilderness, ascending over 3,000 feet of elevation. The name comes from a Native American legend, though it was popularized by Verplanck Colvin, the surveyor who confirmed this as the Hudson's true source in 1872. Fact 29. The Allegheny Plateau covering half the state. Southern and western New York sit on the Allegheny Plateau, a vast upland of flat-topped hills carved by rivers. This isn't dramatically mountainous terrain. It's a high plateau that's been dissected into rolling hills and valleys, creating some of the state's prime agricultural land in the valleys and forested ridges between. The plateau tilts gently southward, sending rivers like the Susquehanna and Allegheny flowing toward Pennsylvania and eventually the Gulf of Mexico. Fact 28. Drumlins by the thousands. The landscape around Syracuse is dotted with thousands of drumlins, elongated, teardrop-shaped hills of glacial till deposited by moving ice sheets. From the air, they look like a school of whales frozen mid-swim, all oriented in the direction the glacier flowed. These streamlined hills mark the passage of ice, their shape revealing which way the glaciers moved. Some drumlins are forested islands in farmland. Others have been quarried for gravel or crowned with buildings. Fact 27. The fall line that doesn't exist. Unlike states to the south, New York doesn't have a dramatic fall line, the boundary where hard Piedmont rock meets soft coastal plain sediments, creating waterfalls. Instead, New York's geology is more complex, with multiple terrains meeting at oblique angles. The Hudson River estuary extends far inland without significant waterfalls, allowing ocean-going ships to reach Albany. This geological quirk gave New York City its natural advantage as a port, deep water access extending far into the continental interior. Fact 26. Letchworth, the Grand Canyon of the East. Letchworth State Park features a 17-mile gorge carved by the Genesee River, with cliffs rising 550 feet and 3 major waterfalls. The Grand Canyon of the East exposes layered sedimentary rock, sandstone, shale, and limestone, deposited 350 to 370 million years ago. The river has been carving this gorge since glaciers retreated, cutting through the plateau at a rate of about 1 foot per 600 years. It's not as big as Arizona's Grand Canyon, but for the East, it's spectacular. The 3 waterfalls, Upper, Middle, and Lower Falls, drop 70, 107, and 71 feet respectively, creating dramatic cascades through the gorge. The park encompasses over 14,000 acres, and in autumn, the gorge walls explode with fall foliage that rivals anywhere in New England, the forest canopy turning the chasm into a river of red, orange, and gold. Fact 25. Karst country and disappearing streams. Parts of the Helderberg region feature karst topography, limestone bedrock riddled with caves, sinkholes, and underground streams. Water dissolves the limestone, creating hidden drainage systems where surface streams suddenly vanish into the ground, flow through cave systems, and reappear miles away. Some sinkholes are large enough to swallow buildings. This is the landscape that inspired Washington Irving's tales of vanishing and reappearing characters. Fact 24. The Shawangunk Ridge and its white cliffs. The Shawangunk Mountains, locals say Shawangum, form a dramatic ridge of white quartzite rising above the Hudson Valley. This incredibly hard, erosion-resistant rock is over 400 million years old. Sand deposited in an ancient delta, compressed into sandstone, then metamorphosed into glittering quartzite. The ridge's cliffs and overhangs make it one of the premier rock climbing destinations in the eastern United States. The white cliffs are visible for miles, gleaming above the forests. Fact 23. An underwater extension of the Appalachians. Long Island's bedrock, buried under glacial deposits, is geologically part of the Appalachian Mountain System. If you could strip away the sediment and moraine material, you'd find metamorphic rock related to the Appalachians extending under Long Island Sound and the Atlantic continental shelf. The island sits on the southern edge of a mountain range that continues underwater, hidden beneath hundreds of feet of Ice Age debris and ocean. Fact 22. The Mohawk Valley's strategic gap. The Mohawk River Valley is one of the few water-level routes through the Appalachian Mountain Barrier. This east-west gap allowed the Erie Canal to be built without locks climbing over mountains. It's a geological accident that changed history, a river valley carved at just the right elevation to provide a nearly flat route from the Hudson to Lake Erie. Without this valley, westward expansion and commerce would have followed entirely different paths. Fact 21. Sterling Forest and its billion-year history. The Hudson Highlands contain billion-year-old Grenville-age metamorphic rocks, among the oldest in the state. These rocks were formed deep underground when ancient continents collided, creating mountains that may have rivaled the Himalayas. Those mountains eroded away over hundreds of millions of years, exposing the deep roots that now form the Hudson Highlands. You're looking at the basement of an ancient mountain range that predates trees, predates fish, predates everything except bacteria and algae.
Fact 20. The Genesee River that flows north. The Genesee River is one of the few rivers in the northern hemisphere that flows generally northward. It rises in Pennsylvania, flows north through New York, carves the Letchworth Gorge, and empties into Lake Ontario at Rochester. This quirk is thanks to glacial rearrangement of drainage patterns. The ice sheets blocked old southward flowing routes, forcing rivers to find new paths to the sea, even if that meant flowing backwards toward the Arctic. Fact 19. Howe Caverns and its underground river. Beneath the farmland of Schoharie County, Howe Caverns extends for miles through limestone bedrock dissolved by groundwater. Visitors ride boats on an underground river flowing through cathedral-sized chambers decorated with stalactites and stalagmites. The cave maintains a constant 52 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, a window into the hidden drainage systems that riddle New York's limestone country. The cave was discovered in 1842 when a farmer noticed his cows always gathering near a particular spot during hot weather, a cool breeze flowing from an opening in the ground. Fact 18. The Tectonic Mountains and their mysterious origin. The Tectonic Mountains along New York's eastern border are geologically weird, a slice of ocean floor and volcanic island material thrust westward over the North American continent during a mountain building event 450 million years ago. These rocks don't belong here. They formed offshore and were scraped off a subducting tectonic plate, piled up, and shoved onto the continent in a massive overthrust fault. It's like finding ocean debris on top of a continent, which is exactly what happened. Fact 17. Whiteface Mountain's Olympic legacy. Whiteface Mountain, at 4,867 feet, is the fifth highest peak in New York and features dramatic cirques, amphitheater-shaped valleys carved by alpine glaciers. The mountain's distinctive profile, with steep walls on three sides, comes from small mountain glaciers that remained after the main ice sheet retreated, carving semicircular basins into the peak. The mountain hosted Olympic ski events in 1980, its glacially carved terrain providing world-class slopes. Fact 16. Ausable Chasm, the Grand Canyon in miniature. The Ausable River has carved a dramatic sandstone chasm up to 200 feet deep and barely wide enough to walk through. Rainbow Falls and other cascades tumble through the narrow gorge, which has been a tourist attraction since the 1870s. The chasm was carved by the river over thousands of years as it exploited weaknesses in the layered sandstone. It's the Adirondack's answer to western slot canyons, a tight, twisting gorge where sunlight barely reaches the bottom. The walls close in so tightly in some sections that you can touch both sides at once while standing in the middle. The sandstone was deposited 500 million years ago as beach sand when this region was at the edge of an ancient ocean. Visitors can raft through the chasm, ride inner tubes down the rapids, or hike along walkways and bridges suspended above the churning water. Fact 15. The New York State Barge Canal System. The modern Barge Canal, successor to the Erie Canal, still operates 524 miles of navigable waterways across upstate New York, connecting the Hudson River to Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, Lake Champlain, and the Finger Lakes. Much of the modern system uses natural rivers and lakes, with only portions requiring excavated channels. It's a hybrid of natural and engineered geography, following routes carved by glacial meltwater and connected by human-dug channels. Fact 14. Fire Island and its migrating dunes. Fire Island, a barrier island off Long Island's south shore, features migrating sand dunes that move westward at several feet per year, driven by prevailing winds and ocean currents. The island itself is geologically temporary. Barrier islands constantly shift, erode, and rebuild. What's beach today may be underwater tomorrow, and vice versa. Fire Island is essentially a moving sand pile trying to migrate toward Long Island, but held, temporarily, in place by vegetation, structures, and beach stabilization efforts. Fact 13. The Ashokan Reservoir and Drowned Towns. The Ashokan Reservoir in the Catskills, completed in 1915, drowned multiple villages and required relocating over 2,000 residents to create New York City's water supply. 8 communities vanished underwater: West Hurley, Ashton, Brown Station, Olive, Olive Bridge, Shokin, West Shokin, and Boyceville, partially. During severe droughts, when water levels drop, stone walls, foundations, and old roads reappear, ghost towns returning from beneath the reservoir that destroyed them. The reservoir covers 8,315 acres and holds 122 billion gallons of water. Entire cemeteries were relocated, with over 2,800 bodies exhumed and moved to higher ground. Churches were dismantled stone by stone. Homes were either moved to new locations or demolished and burned. The project required moving 12 miles of highway and railroad tracks and building a new route around the reservoir basin. Fact 12. Chimney Bluffs and its eroding spires. Along Lake Ontario's shoreline, Chimney Bluff State Park features bizarre erosional landforms, tall spires and hoodoos of glacial till being actively carved by wave action and rain. These clay and gravel chimneys rise up to 150 feet and are constantly changing shape as erosion attacks them. The bluffs look like badlands transplanted to the lakeshore, a landscape in fast-forward geological transformation where you can watch features appear and disappear within years. Fact 11. The Montauk Point Glacial Boulder. The terminal moraine that forms Long Island's backbone culminates at Montauk Point, where massive glacial erratics, boulders carried from far to the north and dropped when the ice melted, scatter across the landscape. Some boulders weigh hundreds of tons and are composed of rock types not found anywhere on Long Island, proof they were transported from Canada or northern New England by ice and deposited when the glacier retreated. Fact 10. Zoar Valley's Hidden Wilderness. Zoar Valley, carved by Cattaraugus Creek in western New York, contains old-growth forest and dramatic gorges up to 400 feet deep. The valley is so rugged and inaccessible that parts remained largely unexplored until recent decades. Its steep walls protected patches of virgin forest from logging, creating ecological time capsules where trees have stood for centuries. The gorge exposes Devonian-age rocks full of fossils from when New York was a tropical sea. Fact 9. The Hudson River's Underwater Canyon. The Hudson River carved a submarine canyon extending 400 miles offshore across the continental shelf. During Ice Age low sea levels, the river flowed across the exposed shelf and cut a deep canyon, which remains visible underwater today. This submarine canyon funnels cold, nutrient-rich water from the deep ocean toward shore, creating unique marine habitats and affecting the ecology of the New York Bight. Fact 8. Watkins Glen's 19 waterfalls in 2 miles. Watkins Glen State Park features a trail passing 19 waterfalls in just 2 miles, carved through layered sedimentary rock, shale, sandstone, and limestone deposited 380 to 360 million years ago. The Glen's stream has cut a 400-foot deep gorge through these layers since glaciers retreated, creating a geological museum where you walk through time, each layer revealing a different epoch when New York was underwater. The trail passes under and behind waterfalls through tunnels cut in rock. Fact 7. The Saratoga Springs Mineral Waters. Saratoga Springs features naturally carbonated mineral springs emerging from deep underground, charged with carbon dioxide from ancient organic material decomposing in deep rock layers. People have bottled and consumed these waters since the 1700s. The springs mark geological faults, allowing deep water to rise to the surface, carrying dissolved minerals and CO2 that fizzes like soda. The geology created a natural spa that became a resort town. Fact 6. Niagara's power, moving more water than any waterfall in North America. Niagara Falls moves about 750,000 gallons of water per second during peak flow, the highest flow rate of any waterfall in North America. The falls tap the entire drainage of the upper Great Lakes, funneling water from Superior, Michigan, Huron, and Erie through a single channel. The sound is audible from miles away. The mist rises hundreds of feet. Standing near the base, you feel the ground vibrate from millions of gallons hammering rock every minute. Fact 5. The Pine Barrens ecosystem on glacial sand. Long Island's pine barrens sit on sandy outwash plains deposited by glacial meltwater. The porous soil drains quickly, creating a scrubby, fire-adapted ecosystem more typical of New Jersey than the rest of New York. Pitch pines and scrub oaks dominate landscapes that burn periodically, with plants adapted to recover quickly from fire. This unlikely ecosystem exists on Long Island because glacial geology created the perfect substrate, infertile sand that prevents forests from growing too dense.
Fact 4. Clark Reservation's Meromictic Green Lake. Green Lake, in a glacial plunge pool near Syracuse, is meromictic. Its deep layer never mixes with surface water. The bottom layer remains anoxic, oxygen-free, creating unique chemistry and biology. Dissolved minerals give the lake its distinctive color. The lake occupies a glacial plunge pool carved when meltwater plunged over a cliff, drilling a deep hole in the bedrock. It's deeper than expected for its small size, with a stratified water column that's remained stable for thousands of years. Fact 3. The Onondaga Escarpment and its fossil wealth. The Onondaga Escarpment, a limestone ridge running across central New York, exposes 400-million-year-old marine limestone packed with fossils. Quarries in this formation produce both building stone and paleontological treasures, complete trilobites, brachiopods, corals, and crinoids. The stone built many of Syracuse's 19th-century buildings. The fossils remind us that this landlocked region was once a warm, shallow sea teeming with life. Fact 2. High Peaks Wilderness and Alpine Summits. The Adirondack High Peaks include 46 mountains over 4,000 feet, some featuring alpine zones above treeline where tundra plants grow on exposed bedrock. These mountaintops support rare plant communities typical of areas hundreds of miles farther north. The highest peaks, Mount Marcy, 5,344 feet, Algonquin Peak, 5,114 feet, and Mount Haystack, 4,960 feet, host ecosystems more similar to northern Canada than the rest of New York, isolated on summits scraped bare by ice and scoured by brutal winter winds. Fact 1. A state built layer by layer, carved by ice, and shaped by water. From billion-year-old Adirondack bedrock to glacial lakes plunging below sea level, from waterfalls carved in the last 10,000 years to submarine canyons 400 miles offshore, New York's geography is a masterpiece of deep time and ice age transformation. Ancient seas deposited the sediments. Tectonic collisions built the mountains. Glaciers reshaped everything. Rivers carved gorges. And humans built canals to connect it all. This is a landscape where every rock tells a story spanning hundreds of millions of years, where lakes remember the ice, and where mountains still rise, slowly, imperceptibly, from forces deep below. New York isn't just skyscrapers and city lights. It's an epic written in stone, ice, and water, a place where geology shaped history and geography determined destiny. The bedrock anchoring Manhattan's towers is older than complex life. The lakes filling the Finger Lakes valleys are younger than human civilization. And the Hudson River connecting it all flows in two directions, just like the state itself, looking forward to the ocean and backward to the continental interior, forever caught between ancient mountains and modern ambitions. That's New York, old as the earth, young as the glaciers, and absolutely unforgettable.